Right then. We'll come back to this. We will do it.
We'll
right.
loop back around.
Oh, you sound so corporate.
Mate, it's this high-class setup that's doing it.
We should do follow-up.
Follow-up is very simple. BattleBots Season 4 is now a tiny bit more confirmed.
Astonishing.
They've used the term season. They've mentioned a TV taping. We're getting there, but I'm still not willing to say Season 4 confirmed.
What would it take for it to be Season 4 confirmed? Are you going to have to wait until a trailer or Episode 1 or what?
I would need to specifically read the words Discovery and Season together in that context. I think that'd be enough for me. Or some kind of social media output from Discovery saying, we're filming another season of BattleBots. It's going to be great.
So from Discovery rather than from BattleBots?
Well, if BattleBots said, we have renewed our deal with Discovery, this is going to be televised on Discovery in autumn or whatever, then yeah, that's Season 4 confirmed. But until then, the fact they're saying that they're doing an event and the fact they're saying they're filming it isn't quite confirmation. We could sit here with 2 toy cars, smash them together and film it. That doesn't mean that we're making a season of BattleBots.
It'd be such a terrible season.
Just trying to sort of hide the fact that we're just pushing them around with our hands.
They'll wear black gloves and stuff. Terrible.
Stop motion.
I don't even want to think about how much work that would be.
Work shy. Terrible. But yeah, it's basically confirmed, but I still refuse to be the person that said it was confirmed. Because I'm sure that the whole world is waiting on me and me alone to make sure this is confirmed. So we got something 95% confirmed. We've also got something 100% confirmed. And that is Series 2 of BoggleBots.
Yes.
Happening sooner than expected as well. I kind of assumed it was going to be the same time in the year, so shooting around September time, but no, shooting in May. So we are much closer to more BoggleBots than we thought.
Well, is it that we're much closer to more BoggleBots, or is it that they're giving themselves more time to get it all finished up and edited?
That would also make sense. Thanks for raining on that parade of mine. Can we please move on?
This isn't really sort of direct follow-up, but it is something that we've been asked a couple of times, and I thought maybe we should talk about it on air. So we, in the past, have sort of mentioned the possibility of maybe covering live events on Spinnerproof, and then have never really followed through on that. And a few people have commented and asked us, if we're ever going to do it, and if so, when. And I think it's just worth saying now, we're probably not ever going to do it.
No, I think we both kind of agree it's not something we're going to do. We've just got very different reasons for not doing it. I'll let you go first. I feel like I've just thrown you under the bus there, saying you say your reasons.
Yeah, well, the problem is I feel like my reasons all just devolve into me being not a very good fan of robot combat. I personally, I'm not going to speak for Ryan, but I don't particularly enjoy live streams. And it's not just live streams of robot combat, it's just live streams in general. I kind of want to like them because I feel like there's a lot of good content in them, and there's like whenever I see little like 5-second highlights or 5-minute clips and stuff, it's sort of like, oh yeah, this was really good. I wish I could have sort of been there. But like whenever I try and sit down and actually watch one, it's just doesn't. The lack of editing and the slow pacing, it's always going to come down to that, hurts me in the end, and so I can't get into them.
Yeah, I think production value matters for you in general, doesn't it, on all things?
Yeah.
So even when there's an all fights playlist, it can sometimes still be quite rough watching.
Yes, this is the other thing is every now and then I sort of try and watch someone will collect all the fights together from a live stream, or they'll do a fights only version of something, even like a televised event and stuff, and I try and watch those, and even that's almost too much the other way now. That's sort of, there's not enough context around what's going on for me to sort of get in and form any useful kind of opinions on anything. I'm
kind of in that same boat where, I love live streams, but just because something is enjoyable to watch doesn't mean that it's enjoyable or interesting to talk about. So, for example, this weekend was Motorama. I watched the whole thing. It was excellent to watch. But then I think about, okay, what would we actually have to say about this? We're people that like to talk about the robots rather than the fights. And I can look at some of those robots and have a lot to say about them, but a lot of them, without a lot of background information, I'm not sure I could say that much. Apart from, it's a good compact vertical spinner. That would be about 60% of that episode if we did it. Mm. And we also kind of thrive on talking about meta. And this idea, it's kind of what we're doing with this whole tournament. It's, okay, how does this type of robot match up against this type of robot? And most live events tend to be quite strongly dominated by one or two weapon types. So you quite quickly reach a point where you're saying the same thing over and over again. And I just don't think maybe this is a limitation of our abilities that I'm talking about here. I don't believe that we could make an interesting series of episodes about most live events.
I think there's definitely interesting podcast material to be had from those things. I think you need to have a lot more insider information maybe, or something, or just have a different approach that we haven't thought of to sort of extract that value. I think the content exists. I think Spinnerproof is not the vessel for that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that sort of insider thing. I think if we went to a live event and were part of one, we'd have a lot to say.
Yeah.
But as a viewer of it, there's really not that much that we can add. There's not value that we can add. And then, of course, there's another factor to all of this in terms of trying to think from the perspective of a listener. Do I want to go away and do 3 hours homework to listen to a podcast? Or do we really think that we're good enough that people are going to spend hours investing in being able to understand what we're talking about?
I think the answer is no.
No, I mean, I'm the sort of person that would do that, but I don't expect anyone else to. So when we're talking about robot wars or battlebots or bugglebots, we can be fairly certain that most people that listen to any combat robot podcast have already seen that or were planning to watch it.
Yeah.
And even if they weren't, 45 minutes of watching a very well-produced show is no chore for anyone. Whereas the idea that you're going to have to go and watch all of these fights just for what we're saying to make sense, I think is a step too far for most people.
Yeah.
Swift follow-up over, now on to the main event. The part you've all been waiting for. Part 2 of what is probably going to be at least 8 of the still unnamed tournament.
Oh, dear.
Retunkti Part 2.
Oh, Retunkti.
I mean, I've named things worse.
I believe you.
I mean, Split Decision is still a terrible name. Got it in there. So we made it through 16 fights last time. 16 1v1s. This is the second batch of 16 1v1s before we move on to some three-way melees. And then back into 1v1s.
Oh, my goodness me.
As before, links to the rules and everything will be in the show notes in case this doesn't make any sense. Also, very good advice we got on the last one. In the show notes, there will be a list of the kind of fixtures first, and then the analysis and results of them afterwards. Because no one likes spoilers.
And yet we put it the other way around last time anyway.
Yep, it's okay. I put a spoiler warning on it. That totally worked.
The joys of not thinking ahead.
It's great how you say that on This Is Probably the Thing that I've thought ahead on more than anything we've ever done. The 2 or 3 days of writing and revising rules.
You haven't worked hard enough, Ryan. Work harder.
It's never enough.
You got to make this better.
We're striving for Borg perfection here. Shall we get straight into it? With decisions to be made in Nuts versus Icewave.
Yeah.
It's an easy decision. Which version of Nuts are we going with? The latest and most effective one that made a grand final? Excellent.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Make life easy? Icewave has been basically the same machine forever, so that's also fine.
It is.
We're in the Robot Wars arena. Is that going to have any effect whatsoever on this fight?
Beyond dictating the house robots, no.
I feel like Icewave is the kind of robot that the house robots just would intentionally not touch.
Yeah.
That's something that I've never thought to think about with the house robots. The fact that they kind of have to avoid taking damage. Because from a production point of view, you need them in every fight. And okay, you've got a few, but if you've got your big anti-spinner too of Shunt and Sakilla-lot, and you've got more spinners coming up, you kind of have to keep them in working order.
What we can assume here, for the purposes of our tournament, is that they have unlimited funding. And so there's, there's at least one more Shunt lying around.
We're really putting the fantasy in fantasy tournament there, aren't we?
Oh yeah, the BBC with unlimited funding.
Well, I mean, a series of Robot Wars at all is fantasy at this point. But...
That's true. I think the most important question here is how high up are the flails on Nuts as compared to the height of the engine on Icewave? And then the second important question is how flimsy is the armour around the motor?
I mean, I'd argue that the moment something has armour, it's not getting hurt by Nuts. Nuts is very good at finding exposed weak spots. As soon as those weak spots aren't exposed, I think Nuts is in a little bit of trouble.
Just a touch. I'm just going to reach for a little bit because I like Nuts and I don't want to give them the inevitable 1 to 6 or whatever it is that we're going to
1 to 5.
1 to 5. I'm sorry. That we're going to have to give them. So I want to try and reach and see if I can claw a 2 for Nuts. Would the chains be enough to entangle the spinner on Icewave.
I'd be very surprised.
I would be too. Like I said, I'm reaching.
I can reach for you.
Okay.
In a way that neither of us are going to like.
Oh no.
Icewave, as the name suggests, uses an internal combustion engine, which requires oxygen.
What?
There is a feature in the Robot Wars arena that could starve said engine of oxygen.
No. Oh, I know where you're going
This
with this.
could be the first ever effective use of Fog of War.
You are properly reaching.
I'm reaching so far that my arm has doubled in length.
How incredible would that be if Fog of War shut down that engine?
I mean, I'm fairly sure they can just immediately restart it, but still.
I mean, that's not the point. If Fog of War starves that engine of enough oxygen to actually turn it off, I would be floored.
This was a thing in the early days of BattleBots. In fact, technically the early days of Robot Wars before it was a BBC property, I think, where quite a lot of robots were using engines, and there were one or two machines whose whole game plan was to, I think it was halon gas they used, to just smother the engine.
That cannot be legal anymore.
Fairly sure that was banned quite quickly, but we've got it built into the arena now.
Yeah.
The other factor that Nuts has on its side is the mini-bots.
I mean, they're going to make it a little bit harder, possibly, for Icewave to win, but like it's not going to magically make Nuts a damaging robot.
No, but under the Robot Wars rules, it appears that being sort of pinned on a mini-bot would potentially allow you to be counted out because it almost happened to Carbide against Nuts. So there is the potential under the silly rules, but we've said it's under home arena rules.
Yeah.
There is potential for a mini-bot high centering.
Okay, right. So if we combine all of this reaching together,
Still a 5-1, isn't it?
I think it's still probably
Plus,
a 5-1.
actually, now I think about it, I think that rule only counted in melees. Because it would have been Nuts versus Behemoth versus Carbide, but Behemoth went out quite early and are therefore quite easily forgotten from that fight.
Poor Behemoth.
It's a 1 and 5, but we know we're both praying for a 1 here.
Yeah.
We can't have our boy going out.
Are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
What is the number? So 1 for
1
Nuts.
for Nuts, anything else for Icewave.
No way.
Yes!
No one's going to believe us. Genuinely, I feel like I should take a picture of this.
I love how... Oh, yeah, because that's not fakeable
Oh,
at all.
well, I've said it, so I'm going to do it just in case.
I mean, you're welcome to.
It's going to reveal that, like, I've got a Canon printer.
I was rather hoping that you had a shutter sound on there that would come through as Foley. Do not spend any time setting it up to do that, Sam.
No.
I was hoping you go full selfie mode.
No,
there.
no, I could do it. I'm not going to. I've wasted enough time taking a pointless picture as it is.
So both rounds have started with upsets
I'm not upset
on a
about
roll
this.
of 1.
I'm not upset about this.
Oh, I'm not upset at all either. I'll point out, I really like Icewave, but it's Nuts we're talking about. Champion of our
How
hearts.
can we justify this, though? Like, you can't possibly have Nuts winning this fight.
We've gone through multiple ways to justify it.
So what are we going to go with, then? What is the reason? So, so we activate Fog of War.
Ideally via one of the mini-bots.
So mini-bots do Fog of War. That takes the engine for Icewave out for a little bit. And then...
For some reason, their auto restart doesn't work.
Well, no, I'm almost willing to sort of try and combine all of these reaches together. I'm almost willing to go that they do manage to get it going again, but because it's now... It's not going at full speed when the flails start being the entanglement interference thing, so that they're less likely to just sort of be sent flying. They sort of do actually get in and... This is ridiculous.
Keep going, I'm loving this.
So the flails do actually get in there and interfere with the weapon enough, and they, I don't know, maybe damage something, and then the weapon's not, like, the big bar isn't quite as effective. I don't even know, like, what is
It would make sense that if they got entangled and tried to spin up, there could maybe be some clutch damage.
Yeah.
Although, even if that happens, I'm still thinking that because of Robot War's aggression rules, they still probably end up winning the fight.
And then, I mean, this is going to go to a judges at this point, because, like, I'm going to assume that Nuts can't really do any damage.
Nuts can't, but House Robots could.
Well, that's true.
I'm imagining that Icewave could get desperate, go for the pit release, because obviously they would be able to push Nuts fairly effectively. They still got a wedge of sorts.
Yep.
Maybe they go for that in a bit of panic. Rogue House Robot ends up with some critical damage to them.
Oh, I was going to say maybe Matilda would be in there and do some damage, but Matilda just wouldn't be in the arena at all.
No, but Shunt would. Nice overhead attack to a fuel tank, maybe?
Mm-hmm. I think that's all we've got to go with, isn't it?
It's good enough. We've justified it, sort of.
Deary me.
Start as you mean to go on, Sam. Big upsets all the time. And it's only going to get worse from here, potentially.
So, moving swiftly on, we have Supernova versus Razer.
I'm going to go to great pains to point out that this is Reboot Razer and Reboot Supernova. Supernova we technically need to pick a version of, but realistically you're going to go for the most recent.
Mm-hmm.
Razer did supposedly have an anti-horizontal setup for Season 8. Series 8. Series 8.
Well, you said it, though.
I said it, but I corrected myself.
Have we got any, proof of that anti-horizontal setup? Have we got any evidence that it exists?
Images of it were posted by the Razer team. I don't have them to hand. I can throw them in the show notes. It was basically their normal front wedge, but where the weight limit had been increased from the old series, they'd basically thrown all of that into a beefier front end. It still leaves their whole sides and rear and the sort of base of the crusher mechanism completely exposed.
Okay. I mean, they'd use it then. If we assume they have it,
oh yeah,
they'd be using it. This conversation is just going to make me cry.
Yeah, I don't want this fight to happen.
I mean, I was so sad when Razer lost in reality, and then in this fantasy tournament where we have control of the rules, we are in control of just about everything other than this die, it's still going to lose, and it makes me sad.
It could win.
Could win.
If they lose, I want them to lose by forfeit, because I don't want them to go in and get hurt.
I mean, they're going to go in and get hurt. I mean, Supernova's spinner did it do damage? I can't remember now.
It was fairly effective. It retired Frostbite, so, they never did seemingly big damage. The fights they had, they tended to throw their chain quite a lot in the sort of most recent version. But they had very tough opposition in the likes of Ironside 3 and Pulsar, a functional Pulsar at that.
Mm.
Both of which were fights that were going to be very hard for them. Kind of outreached by Ironside and uppercutted by Pulsar. But Horizontal Spinner versus Controlbot / Crusher is always a bad matchup for the Controlbot / Crusher.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm sort of thinking is, although all of my memories of Razer are of it going through other robots like butter, but I think that's of much older robots that don't have the kind of armour that exist on modern robots. So I don't even know if Razer would even be able to do that kind of damage anymore.
Mm.
And I don't think we've got any evidence of the modern Razer doing it, do we?
We don't have huge amounts of evidence of any modern Crusher being hugely damaging in the way that the original Razer was.
Mm.
Spectre has been effective, but has also come up against opponents where it's just kind of gone nowhere. Admittedly, that was supposedly when they were having issues with the Crusher. It wasn't running at full tilt, but we're once again reaching to not make this a 5-1.
Let's just get it over with.
5 for Supernova, 1 for Razer.
It's a 5.
Supernova, unsurprisingly, goes through. Are we calling it a close match because it's at the top end of their range?
I'd love to be able to, but I don't think we can justify that. I think we've got to set our bias for Razer aside as best we can.
This is our podcast. We can be as biased as we want. We can give it an honourable death.
What would the honourable death be?
Well, to be fair, the honourable death is getting absolutely trashed.
I think it is. I think we've got to assume that Supernova is on top form.
A moment's silence for Razer as we move on. Next up, it's one that I've been looking forward to in a slightly weird way. Crustacean versus Sweet Revenge.
Why have you been looking forward to this then?
Because Sweet Revenge is the only robot of any of these that I had to look up.
I feel so much less bad now.
Sweet Revenge is a horizontal bar spinner from BattleBots with one of the biggest teams I've ever seen. Its only fight was a pre-qualifier against Radioactive, which it lost. It never even spun up, and it was relegated to, I think, about 10 seconds of highlights. Highlights is a strong term for what they were.
Okay.
This is, to me, the Frostbite of BattleBots. That's the only analogy I can think of for this robot.
I mean, that's a pretty low blow.
Yeah, and I don't think they'd be able to deny it. Although maybe their testing procedures were safer.
I mean, they struggle to be much more dangerous.
Crustacean, on the other hand, is a wonderful robot with no flaws.
Is that so?
Crustacean had a very short-lived return in Series 9. It was taken out in basically one shot by Ironside 3. The only noticeable change they'd made from its old form was that they'd added some of that sort of truck liner paint, which apparently was going to protect them. It did not protect them.
Yeah, I remember that now. That was so
This
silly.
is that awful stuff that people coat an egg in, drop it, and claim that the egg hasn't broken. It's like, no, there's just a broken egg inside of that weird layer of plastic.
What you've done is you've captured a broken egg.
You've imprisoned it.
You've got a broken egg in suspended animation.
It's Schrodinger's egg. It both is and is not broken.
Oh, dear.
So this is one of those where we've got to basically make a decision of which is least worst.
I've got to imagine that Crustacean is going to win this if the other robot, whose name I've forgotten immediately, if Sweet Revenge's weapon didn't even spin up.
Yeah, we've kind of set up a rule whereby we assume that a robot is working at the best we have evidence of it working. And in this case, that is Sweet Revenge not working. Whereas Crustacean, we do at least know, even if we think from sort of the old live events and the old Robot War series, we at least know that it is a robot that can drive and use its weapons.
Crustacean is a Robot Wars thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's got a pit.
Yep.
That it can presumably push Sweet Revenge into.
Yep. It might even be able to actively damage it with its grabbers.
This is also true.
It's a question of whether we can honestly say that it's a 5-1 based on that, or do we have to go 4-2 in some kind of weird fairness?
Fairness to what? You've got a robot that we know works, fighting a robot that we have never seen work.
It's a robot that we know works, but is still at sort of the very bottom of the tier list of robots that work.
I know, but it's still fighting a paperweight.
It's always been, certainly my aim, I won't speak for you, on this podcast to not be actively mean about any robots. But sometimes you just don't have a choice.
Sometimes I cross a line.
Sometimes you can't fabricate enough credit to give a robot. I have no doubt they worked very hard on it, were proud of it, and were disappointed with how it performed. As builders and as people, I feel for them, but we really can't give them anything in the context of what we're doing here.
Sorry.
Are we going 5-1 for a third fight in a row?
Well, like, what do you want to do? Like, justify to me a 4-2.
Oh, I'm not trying to. I'm just moving things along mostly.
Right. 5-1 or 1-5.
Yep.
5-1. 5-1.
5-1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 is Crustacean. A 6 is Sweet Revenge. And I think we all know what's about to happen here, don't we?
It's a 4.
That's a relief for us all. Crustacean lives to go out in the next round.
So up next we have Crackin versus Draven.
It's just the Crusher Grabble? It's the Crusher Grabber special today.
They're all here. I don't have any immediate gut feeling about how to deal with this.
I have a very strong gut feeling of how to deal with this, which is that we're following the pattern of the episode so far.
I think, once again, I'm in the position where I think I'm underestimating Crackin.
I think you must be as well if you're not feeling exactly what I'm feeling here.
What are you feeling?
I feel it's another 5-1.
To
Crackin.
To Crackin. I just want to make sure. we're on the same page here. Because I just want to make sure that what I think you think is actually what you think.
Don't know how to follow that up.
Well, because I remember when we were doing all the BattleBot stuff, I remember being a bit sort of so-so about Crackin, and then being surprised and disappointed in equal measures that they beat Red Devil.
I can't remember what journey I went on with Crackin. I'd like to think I always believed in it, but that may not be the case, and there will be audio evidence of what I did think. All I will say is that based on what we now know about Crackin, it's a contender in a fight like this. It's more than a contender, it's a strong favourite.
I think so.
In Draven, you've got a robot that hasn't ever really shown what it can do. Certainly in televised battles. I don't know if they had anything in live events. That's the sort of thing I should check before recording. But we've certainly seen them get KO'd quite quickly, admittedly by big spinners. But even then, when you look at their design, their grabber lifter is a weird way of doing a grabber lifter with the bottom jaw actuating. And then around that, you've got a lot of ground clearance.
Yeah.
So they're going to be very easily controlled, and I think probably quite easily damaged by the Crusher as well. There's the potential for them to get a good grab on a soft spot. You know, we did see that Crackin had some issues with its wheels getting quite easily taken out, but I think that's enough of a fringe case that I'm happy to go 5-1. Especially given that Draven doesn't even have a pit to rely on because we're in the battle box here.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I can't argue with that. So, are you ready?
Yep, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Crackin, 6 for Draven. Oh, God.
It's a 4.
And Crackin lives on as it deserves to. Right, as well, the upgrades they seem to be making to Crackin, really excited for.
Yeah, what are they changing?
Not really changing anything, just refining. And the numbers that they're stating for their Crusher, if they can achieve them, could be impressive. We're talking numbers on par with Spectre. Let's hope that's what we get.
I hope so.
Next up, we have, in a shocking turn of events, a Crusher in Mohawk versus Sharkoprion.
You know how we occasionally sort of like talk about how, the producers can like set fights up and arrange things in such a way that they get a good variety of interest and all that kind of stuff? We failed at this. Miserably.
I love how by doing this, we're actually developing empathy for EOs. It's okay, these are pre-qualifiers. Most of them would just be highlighted on the actual televised event.
If only they could be highlighted here. I don't even know what to say about this.
Mohawk's such a cool idea and I really want it to work, but it's just never shown itself to work. Which, to be fair, is because I think Crushers just have an awful time in BattleBots in general. Yeah,
I guess when you say like a cool idea, I think, is it the injecting flame bit? Is that the bit that you want to see?
Yeah. I really want to see it work once. Once.
What's the armour like on Sharkoprion?
It's all sort of recycled parts. So I think a lot of it was stuff like a gas tank, which would be some kind of mild steel. So in terms of the armours that you could come up against, it's maybe one of the more crushable. Mm-hmm. Although what it doesn't have is the kind of typical thing that a lot of robots have where the top armour is specifically weaker than everything else, which is what a robot like Mohawk is really trying to capitalise on.
Yeah.
You've also got the fact that Sharkoprion does have a pretty decent spinner on it.
You've said that to me before, and I still don't believe you, because it doesn't seem like it's got any reach.
What do you mean by reach?
I don't...
As in tooth length, or...?
It feels like the spinner is too embedded in the robot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose it's less exposed than we're used to seeing from verticals, but it's still shown itself to be able to deliver some hits.
And it hasn't got a feeder wedge, I can recall.
No.
So what would it be able to hit on Mohawk?
Mohawk is a fairly shallow wedge from the front and still kind of wedged from the sides and rear. We should probably say as well, I guess we're going most modern version of Mohawk here.
Yeah.
Same as we went most modern version of Draven without even talking about it, because we're really consistent. I forgot where we were now.
Well, I'm trying to establish whether or not Sharkoprion can even hit anything meaningful on Mohawk.
I'm sure it could hit the beak, and I think hits to the side are viable as a way of hurting it as well.
Okay.
I'm trying to look through the robots it's faced. So it's faced Reality, which didn't have a feeder wedge, as I recall, and still was able to do enough damage and kind of control the fight. Hypershock it faced as a vertical, which would have had the forks, I suppose. I can't remember what version of Bite Force it faced. I think we're talking Spinner Bite Force. But again, that would have the wedgelets. I think the only thing that... Actually, it's not the only thing that makes this close, but that is the main thing that makes this close. The lack of feeder wedge on Sharko.
Mm.
I said that in the most British way possible. Sharko. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Which way are you leaning? Are you leaning?
I mean, I'm sort of not. I think it could go either way, really. I think if you were to really push me, I think I'd give it to Mohawk. But that's just, I think, because in my head, Sharkoprion is a bit of a joke robot, which I think is probably not fair.
If you were to push me, I'd give it just an edge to Sharko. Because it's got the more damaging weapon and the weapon that requires less control and timing. The one easy-ish route to victory I can see for Mohawk is a good grip on a tyre, which isn't an unreasonable idea. And also the fact that it is going to be able to get under it easily from most angles.
Yeah, I think Sharkoprion is quite a controllable robot in general.
Quite long, but deals with that.
No, sorry, I meant controllable as in the other robot can control it.
That too.
That's what I was getting
Both,
at. I
suppose, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to go. I want to go 50-50.
Normally, I'd be dead against that, and we have a way of dealing with that for next time. Well, for next round.
But for this round,
because we've done so many 5 and 1s, I think I can live with the 3-3.
Let's go with it then.
So it's going to be 1, 2, 3 for Mohawk. Actually, no. Let's switch this up. Evens for Mohawk, odds for Sharkoprion. I don't even know what it was. I just love that little tink.
It's a 3.
Sharkoprion goes through. For the non-mathematicians in the audience, 3 is an odd number.
Everybody wins.
Hang on, did I go even odd or odd even? I can't remember.
Oh no.
Someone wins, I'll check in the edit. One of them won.
Oh, we can't have this.
You see, to me it's even then odd, but actually, ordinarily, starting from 1, it's odder than even. I can't think which I went with. I think I went even then odd.
This is a terrible...
I think that's a Sharko win.
This is a terrible situation to be in.
Do we try and justify both and then just leave in the one that it was?
No, I think someone won and the audience knows and we don't, and we've just got to live with that.
Whatever happened, it was a judge's decision. That's all we know.
Okay. Well, moving on. We have Whiplash versus a Walden Overlord.
I'm upset that you didn't really go for the whip on Whiplash
sorry.
like you normally would.
Up next, we have Whiplash
Cooler whip.
versus a Walden Overlord.
How far are we going to try and reach for an Walden Overlord victory here? We did it for nuts. We have a responsibility to do it for overall for this hot mess.
But like, I don't have the same love for a Walden Overlord as I do for nuts. Controversial, I know. Like, I like a Walden Overlord.
I thought you quite liked a Walden Overlord at first.
I do quite like it, but just not like because it's silly but never been successful. Whereas Nuts is silly and has been successful. And I think that gives Nuts the edge for me.
And a Walden Overlord was never trying to be successful. It was trying to be a cool showpiece.
It is a cool showpiece. And I think as a piece of engineering and even as a piece of art, you might say, I think it's great. But I'm not sure there's any way to justify it winning anything, especially not against Whiplash.
Art don't get no 4 and 2 round here. I mean, Whiplash against a lot of robots, it's going to be hard to justify the other one. In this case, even more so.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Whiplash. The inevitable 6 for a Walden Overlord.
Let's keep this simple so that we know who wins this fight.
This is the... Hang on, how many fights have we done so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our 6th, so we're about due another upset. That's how probability works.
Okay. It's a 2.
And Whiplash marches on. It's a relief. Moving swiftly on to a fight where things could actually happen.
Yes, we have the Disco Inferno versus Rotator. Rotator.
Disco Inferno, the sordid first chapter of all the Chomp controversies. An important touchstone in BattleBot's history for me. And a genuinely good robot. Mm-hmm. We should, however, first just make sure that we've decided which version of Rotator we're going for.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've got some administration to do first.
Such a tough decision.
I think we're going to go with the latest one.
We're going to go with the latest successful one. The one that didn't just immediately get beaten by Witch Doctor. I was going to say the spooky one, and then I just stopped myself.
Oh, no, it's the spooky one from now on. Too spooky for me.
Oh, no.
That's the name of a beetle. Wait.
No, move on. I'd quite like to see you get into remaking heavyweights at ant and beetle scale. Just for the names you'd come up with like that. Tiny jellyfish.
I'm not making a tiny jellyfish.
I mean, it could be successful. Move on, Ryan.
What would you call it? Jelly shot?
You say, just for that alone, it's worth it. There's me trying to think of a name of a really small jellyfish, but no, you've nailed it.
You're welcome.
How much do you remember of the Disco Inferno?
Not a great deal, I'll be honest.
It's a robot that I've always really liked. It's kind of got the spirit of Hypnodisc with the addition of the lifter and some really cool machining to balance the disc.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. I remember us talking about that in the past, about the, clever machining there.
Yeah, the disc that was literally a circle with a tooth on it, but was then balanced by thinning material in certain places. Just loved it. Definitely isn't probably the reason that it broke in another fight. Rotator, on the other hand, had the sort of coming of age this season and is now very hard to discount from basically any fight. So to me, this is a little bit tougher than it maybe should be. Yeah,
I don't know. Because I think Disco Inferno is quite effective with its, even without its, because I vaguely remember watching fights where its spinner wasn't working very well, but it still did quite well with just the lifter bit of it.
That would be the Chomp fight, where the whole controversy around the whole primary weapon rule. I can't do R's and W's. The primary weapon rule.
Yes, I remember now. Yes.
Absolutely dominated with the lifter, but because it was the secondary weapon, it counted for no aggression. Under modern rules, however, it seems like it could do a little better. Although I feel like Rotator is the kind of opponent that it's going to really struggle against.
Yeah.
That undercutter end is going to kind of nullify the lifter, and I'm struggling to think of how they're going to get effective hits off with the disc without taking equally big hits themselves.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close fight, and I think it's in favour of Rotator, I think.
But how close are we willing to say that it is?
I mean, what's the option here? Like, it's close but in favour of Rotator leaves us one choice.
When you put it that way, I realise, yes.
Like, we have one set of numbers we can assign this fight.
Did we tell them about what we've got?
No.
Okay, we won't. Leave that in, though. That's important.
You can tell them if you want.
No, we found a notionally 7-sided die. It's actually a 14-sided die with each number written twice, which is a genius approach that I wish I'd thought of.
But we're not using that at the moment.
In the interest of fairness, we're keeping it the same for this round.
Yeah.
And then once we get into the round of 64, it's going to be 7s from there. Exciting times. Stay tuned for that. So we're saying...
It'll be 1 and 2 for Disco Inferno, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Rotator.
Or 1 and 6 for Disco.
No, because if we do that again, we're going to have another fight where we don't know the result, which is ridiculous and embarrassing.
1 and 2 for Disco, everything else for Tato.
Tato has won.
With a 3.
With a 3.
For those interested.
It was a close fight.
It really would be a close fight.
Yeah.
It's a fight I would genuinely enjoy seeing.
Yeah, close. Should we go with a judge's decision to Tato?
Under old rules. Where it's exactly the same issue again.
Well, no, because we've got to go with modern rules, right?
Oh, yeah, we have to.
Yeah. But that would be funny.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that Disco Inferno is going to have is the wheels.
Mm.
Because it has got that very hypno-disky body.
Yeah.
I think it's very exposed in that area.
Right, so up next we have Hypershock versus... Hypershock versus No, we have Poison Arrow versus Photon Storm.
We've got Spicy Newt versus Photon Storm here. We're going to go full awful competitions.
Poison Arrow versus Photon Storm, just to be clear.
I'm going to be controversial.
Oh dear.
Versioning, of course, is a thing. For Poison Arrow, I'm not going to count Spicy Newt as a version of Poison Arrow, even though it was pretty much literally a respray by all accounts. Photon Storm, however, we have the BattleBots version, but we also have kind of the previous live event version.
Okay.
Which I would argue was better, more effective, more successful. Definitely more successful. We're talking a former UK champion here on the live circuit.
I mean, I don't really remember it because
it's the live circuit, yeah.
Well, no. I don't remember the robot in general because it's fallen foul of being a Razer clone that I've immediately dismissed. So
it also fell foul of its only fight being against Minotaur.
So I'm willing to defer to your expertise in the area. So if you want to go with the with what you believe to be the more effective robot, I am on board.
I suppose really what I'm going to need to do is sell you the idea that Photon Storm is perhaps a better crusher than people give it credit for.
Be my guest.
This was, at one point, one of the really feared UK heavyweights. It is the kind of crusher that has, I believe, come close to retiring opponents. It's one of those things where, from what I've heard of reports of fights, it's the kind of thing that, rather than going through armour, is just breaking all the welds.
Amazing, okay.
And my understanding is that when they run it now on live events, they intentionally tone it down to avoid crippling opponents.
Okay.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just feel the need to point out that a lot of people kind of crap on this robot when there's a lot of people who will also say it's actually much better than it looks. This may have all been pointless, I don't know, but just soapbox moment for me of Photon Storm is actually quite good.
Okay, well I think it's worth bearing in mind.
Poison Arrow, however, is a drum.
This is true.
Photon Storm did not do well against a drum last time.
What happened last time?
It pretty much immediately got the tip of the wedge bent up and from there was muted.
I think it's likely that's going to happen again, that it's going to get its tip bent out of shape.
Although Poison Arrow, as I recall, has always tended to run with forks set quite wide, whereas I think Minotaur actually had the proper, not really feeder wedge, but they're kind of we don't want things to get under us wedge that they sometimes run. So Poison Arrow is maybe a robot there's slightly more chance of it getting under.
That's
and
true.
It's also a smaller drum. So in theory, if you can get it up on that wedge, there's more safe area to crush.
What do you want to give it then? What are you feeling? What are your thoughts?
I've basically been spending this whole time trying to convince you, myself, and an audience that this isn't a 5-1.
I'm willing to go with that. If Photon Storm is as good as you say it is, and I'm willing to believe you.
I don't think many people will be, but
I'm willing. I mean, this is sorry, audience. It's me on the podcast and not you, and you've just got to accept that. So I'm willing to go with a 4 and 2.
Yeah, I'm happy to give a 2 for the team of Alan Young from Apollo, Vulcan, whatever, Andrew Marchant from Tornado, and 2 members of the Storm 2 team. I'm happy to give them a 2 in any situation.
Any and all situations.
That is like a Robot Wars supergroup. That is like the Toto of Robot Wars.
Okay.
So 4-2?
Let's do it.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4 for Poison Arrow, 5, 6 for Photon Storm.
Photon Storm, take it.
Yeah!
With a 5, I might add.
Basically saying that I've made that happen. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
You're saying blame Ryan.
If we'd done what Ryan thinks the audience wanted us to do, then the fight would have gone a different way.
It's quite an easy one to justify, though, isn't it? You know, how that might have gone.
Yeah, I think Photon Storm got the one grip that it needed, and then
razored the hell out of the fight.
let's say it burst a battery just to make it really exciting.
Oh yeah, bit of smoke. That's what we need.
Because we're in control of this. We can do that.
I think they got the crusher in a bit. It wouldn't go any further, so they went under a pulverizer and hammered themselves in like a nail. That's the kind of strategy I want to see in BattleBots.
That would be great.
Let's give me another stupid robot idea. A small arm that places a nail on top of the robot, and then a hammer that comes down and just hammers it in.
Haven't we done that before? I think we've said that idea before.
Wow. What can I say?
Spinnerproof has officially been going long enough that we're repeating ourselves.
I'm plagiarising my own ideas. Hopefully you remember these next 2.
I do, but I'm not willing to introduce them because it is a robot whose name I can't pronounce versus Beta.
So next up, it's Coyote versus Beta.
God damn it.
What's wrong, Sam? I pronounced it perfectly.
Oh, Beta.
I'm very proud of everyone involved in BattleBots for resisting the urge to say Beta. Fair play to them.
Yeah. I mean, just to continue with the theme of you repeating yourself, you said that when we talked about Beta in the first place.
And I still think it now. And also, maximum respect to John Reed for making them do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think Beta's going to win.
I think so too, but I don't want to. I don't want it to be that simple.
Okay.
And I did this is probably the one that I did the most video watching for to try and convince myself that it's not how I think it is. Because I was kind of looking at this as Beta is a very powerful weapon, but it's also a wide wedge. And a wide wedge will often struggle against forks like Coyote has.
Okay.
Then I saw it face Overhaul, which is a very similar setup to Coyote in terms of the sort of grabber lifter. And it consistently got under it, which you feel like shouldn't happen, but did. And I was blown away once again by just how good John is at lining up hits for that hammer. I always thought that Overhaul fight was one lucky hit to a key component, but actually he battered them repeatedly. And when you look at how Coyote did against Thor, where Thor was very easily able to break the weapon just by hitting the top of it, Beta's potentially going to have a field day here.
Yeah.
I feel like I was trying to persuade you and myself that Coyote had a chance, and I've done the complete opposite.
No, I think you've pretty conclusively established that Coyote, I think that was right, is going to lose this fight.
And it's such a shame because I have so much love for that robot.
I still remember, because it was Coyote that was just the amazing, just like twisted mess at the end of a particular fight that I still...
Carbide fight, yep.
Yeah, I still have that image in my head. I still remember it occasionally. It's so good.
We have given them a chance to fix it, you realise?
Yes, obviously. Obviously, this is a fixed. I'm not gonna risk it for a third time. This is a fixed robot.
And of course, we've used our podcast telepathy to decide that we are using the most recent version of Coyote.
We're not very good at these rules, are we?
I'm sorry, but when there have been basically no changes made, it's kind of hard to remember.
Oh dear. Right then. What are the numbers?
You call it.
I mean, I think Beta's going to win, and I think it's.
So we are going 1 and 5.
I think it's going to be 1 and 5.
Even though we're in the Robot Wars arena, and John Reed has a history of driving straight into pits.
I
mean, yes, obviously, yes.
1 and 5.
1 and 5.
So what is it? 1.
So 1 for Coyote, everything else for Beta.
It's a 3. Beta has 1. We're safe.
Coyote comes out with the broken jaw once again.
Poor guys.
Next up, it's Ghost Raptor versus TR2.
Yes.
Robots that I'm worried you have very few opinions on, apart from not liking Ghost Rap.
I think that just about sums it up. TR2 is a flipper, and it flips things. And Ghost Raptor I just don't like, for no particular reason, I think. I think it's just I don't know, it's sort of like weirdly and unnecessarily over-engineered.
Ghost Raptor's a difficult one. Because again, we technically have a decision to make here between versions.
That's true.
So there was the Season 1 version, which started off as a spinner and then became oh no, our spinner's broken, we need to improvise a weapon for every fight from here. So they kind of went in with a lifter at one point. They did the horrible keep away bar against Ice Wave, which I think is why a lot of people don't like them.
Yeah.
And that had quite a deep run. We compare that to the second version, which was back to its spinner self, and I think lost its first fight against Sanabayashi.
I believe so. And they were, yeah. Because that second version, I think, is the one that I remember the most. And it's got like the big spinner thing, but it's articulated in a weird way, and just everything's flimsy, and the left-hand side isn't really connected to the right-hand side, and all kinds of other weird stuff like that.
Which is kind of what the first version was, although I think the drive was less modular in that version. I think that was an addition for the second. The first was a bit more of a together sort of drive frame is the word I want to use, but that's not a thing. I don't know what word I'm looking for now. Something frame.
I don't know. Chassis?
Let's go with chassis. Why not?
A chassis frame?
I'm kind of tempted to say that this is controversial, but I think you're going to like it.
Okay.
I'm tempted to say that we go with the first version as a Swiss Army bot, which is technically what it became, even though it wasn't designed as one.
I think you are pushing your luck way too much there. I don't think we can do that. I think the limits of what you can do, because we sort of allowed it a little bit for traction, and I'm still a bit kind of on the fence about allowing them to use that piece of armor that was donated to them. And I think it would be too far, definitely too far, to say that Ghost Raptor is what it became in that particular event, because it's not what it was designed to be. I think we've crossed a line there, and I can't articulate what that line is.
I'm just going to check the rules.
Oh no.
I'm not sure I made a specific rule for this, but I feel like we set a precedent last time.
You're going to get all lawyer on me, are you? There's legal precedent for this.
In the case of Traction versus whoever they fought, can't remember now. It was some kind of spinner, I remember that much.
I mean, the way to sidestep this is just go with the latest version of Ghost Raptor.
But we can't honestly say that that's the more effective version.
Oh, that's one of the rules, isn't it?
We have to pick the most effective version. If they're equal, we just go most recent. And it's not just about most effective for this fight, it's most effective overall.
Yeah, I know, and most effective it's got to be the season 1 one, because it got further. But I'm still not happy about you trying to make it a Swiss Army bot when it isn't.
I think, and I may have to pull rank here as the person that wrote the rules. No, I won't do that to you.
You can do that.
I think that there would be an argument for not only saying it is a Swiss Army bot, but by saying they have the potential to make any weapon. And I'm not going to do that. But I think we have to consider the weapons that they used, because they are, albeit an unplanned part of the robot, they are a part of the robot.
This is like authorial intent.
Oh, no, it's not that bad. Although I can claim authorial intent on the rules.
I mean, I don't want to say that Ghost Raptor is a Swiss Army bot, because it isn't technically. But you're sort of right about the precedence thing, which is upsetting to me. I've let my love of traction corrupt the rules, and now we're in this situation where I think I have no choice but to let you claim that Ghost Raptor is a Swiss Army bot, which makes me sad.
I'm glad you said that, because I was just about to concede to you, but you said it now, so...
God damn it.
I'm just reviewing my wording of the interchangeable weaponry rules.
Should we delay this episode so that we can hire a lawyer? So we can hire a lawyer to look at this.
I've called my solicitor. I really wish we actually just had a third person we could just run this by right now. Just Skype Mike. I want to turn back time and not accept the traction wedge. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, that's what I'd do.
I don't like the consequences of that decision, but at the same time, I feel like we have to now stick with them.
I mean, this is like, are we falling into one of these like fallacies, right? Is this like a sunk cost type thing where because we've made a bad decision, we're going to keep making the bad decision? It's
not sunk cost. It's precedent.
It's one of these, but it's definitely one of these like thought technologies that we need to consider here. If you want to push for the precedence of having done this before, I will allow it, but be unhappy.
I don't want to push for it. I just feel like I have to. I feel like it's an intellectual honesty kind of thing. We have to let this happen and just accept that it's our own faults for the decisions of the past.
Right.
Left.
I reckon, here's what we do. Here's the solution. Ghost Raptor goes in and it's a spinner, until someone does the damage that's required to make them rethink. Because that's what happened in the thing. That's the way that it happened in real life. I don't think we can justify saying that therefore it's just automatically a Swiss Army bot. I think all we can do is go, things can happen in this tournament that might cause them to have to make new weapons.
I love that you think that's better. It's not better.
How is that not better?
I'm willing to go with it, but it's not better. So, how does this sound? Ghost Raptor, at present, is a spinner. The moment it wins a fight by being at the edge of its number range, do we then say that critical damage has occurred?
Oh, God.
Because we can't just make it arbitrary. We've got to, if we're going to have a random event, it has to be based on the roll of the die.
We're going to need an entire subsection of rules just to account for Ghost Raptor.
It's easy to just let him have all the weapons from the offset.
No, because that feels wrong.
This doesn't feel right.
But it's close. But it's like, it's what happened, It's like...
Just because it's what happened doesn't make it right.
Well, I feel like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place now.
When we were talking about the Razer fight, I had it in the back of my mind that they have made modifications in the past that might come in handy. To me, this still falls within that. I was wondering if lifter Razer might be an option. I then decided it wasn't, but... because that was silly.
Razor. Right, okay, fine. I'll let you have your... No, I'm getting a finger pointed at me.
If we're 50-50 on this decision, we have a way of breaking the tie.
Oh, God, okay. No, we can't let the rules come down to a random choice.
Why not?
Because they're the rules. They need to be decided. I mean, in an ideal world, they'd be decided well before this point by a higher power.
What's better? The rules being decided by one person bowing to social pressure, or the rules being decided by an act of randomness? Embrace the chaos.
Ghost Raptor is not a Swiss Army bot. This is going to be the
Ghost Raptor has been a Swiss Army bot.
This is the entirety of the podcast now.
Man, I wish this was up first.
Defining Swiss Army bot.
Again, I don't want to be arguing this point of view, but I feel very strongly that it is the correct answer. I don't like it. I hate that it's the correct answer. But I firmly believe that it is.
Right then, this is your project. So I'm gonna this is your idea, this whole tournament, it's your thing. So I will let you decide how to decide what Ghost Raptor is. If you want to roll a die for it, I will roll a die. If you want to just say it's a not a multi-bot, if you want to just say it's a Swiss Army bot, I'll go with that.
Can we just confirm that by you doing this now, this is how we then have to deal with all further rules disputes?
What, just defer to you?
Yeah.
As long as we
Do you want that?
As long as we have a proper discussion beforehand, as long as I get an opportunity to try and persuade you that my thinking is right, if we get to the point where we're in a tie-break...
If we're getting to the point where we would consider a die roll...
Yeah. I think I'm willing to defer to you on whether or not you want the die roll.
And I'm willing to let you. If we're deferring to me, then there's no die roll. I'm just making an overarching decision.
Go for it.
Ghost Raptor's a Swiss Army bot.
Oh, you hurt me. Okay.
I don't like it, and I don't like having to do this to you, but I strongly feel it is the correct decision.
Fine, let's do it then. I mean, does it matter for this fight? What are they going to do?
Hugely, yeah. Because the spinner would be the wrong approach in this fight.
What are they going to do then?
I think they go with their lifter setup. And they try and win the ground clearance battle. Because remember that TR2, who we have not yet spoken about at all, is one of the only robots to have ever beaten Carbide. It is very good at killing a horizontal. Especially a bad horizontal like Ghost Raptor.
So can we just check that TR2 is in fact a flipper and not something else?
I mean, they could potentially turn it upside down and make it a hammer. Oh, bum axe or no bum axe?
I almost don't know how to parse that sentence. Does it matter?
No, but we have to make the decision anyway.
I mean, we might as well have a bum axe. I mean, why not?
Could affect self-writing if they're up against the lifter version.
I think they're going to put a bum axe on it.
I think they're going to do it for the memes. So, TR2. Let's talk about TR2 as a robot.
Okay.
It is a very good machine. It's taken some big scalps. It's beaten Carbide. It's beaten Pulsar. It's beaten Thor. Yes, Thor is a scalp. 3rd place in Robot Wars. This is a high-class machine.
No disputes here.
Which I believe, regardless of which of the Swiss Army versions of Ghost Raptor comes in, is still a 5-1. Just to make the whole thing completely pointless.
This is a complete waste of everyone's time. Fine. 5 and... Oh.
But we had to check. Sorry, 1 and 5 as well.
It's 1 and 5. Of course it is. Right, so what, 1 for Ghost Raptor.
Everything else for TR2.
Everything
If this
else.
comes out as a 1, I'm leaving the room.
Never more have I wanted it to be a 1. It's a 4.
TR2 wins.
TR2 wins.
Ghost Raptor goes away to think of more weapons.
But it just renders that entire conversation utterly pointless.
Yeah, but if it comes up again, it matters.
But Ghost Raptor's not going to come up again, is it?
I mean, there might be a third robot that we haven't even realised this is a problem for yet. That's the thing.
I mean, this is true, but like all that discussion for one fight that was a 5 and 1 that it then lost. It's just
No regrets. It's okay. The next one's going to be a shorter discussion.
Moving swiftly on then. Not swiftly enough, but moving swiftly on. We have Frostbite versus Razorback.
Good old Swiss Army bot here in Razorback. We need to quickly choose between grabber and drum for Razorback.
I don't know which was more. I want them to use the grabber because I think the grabber's cool.
I mean, they're up against a very powerful horizontal spinner here.
Ungodly power in Frostbite.
If there's ever a situation against a horizontal where a grabber is a reasonable option, it is this one.
So I don't know what the team is like, but I remember, obviously, there have been situations with other teams where they go for the weapon that's less damaging because they're up against an opponent that they think is really weak, and therefore they can test out a slightly different weapon setup.
Because that's gone so well historically.
It's never ended badly. And but I don't know what this team is like. I don't know whether they do the sort of logical thing for this fight, which I would think is probably the drum, probably. Or whether they'd sort of change it up. Which weapon is the sort of like the primary weapon, like the main weapon?
When I think of Razorback, my personal image of it is with the grabber. But that's just because it is more unique that way. And also, the loss they had against Bronco came from getting stuck on their side, which wouldn't have happened with the grabber. Not really a factor here against Frostbite, but...
No, that spin, it might send them flying, they'll ricochet off a wall and then land on their side.
Well, we're in the Robot Wars arena.
This is true.
Which means that A, that is a slight possibility from the floor flipper. It also means that the pit is a factor, which would make the grabber a more useful option.
I don't know if we're reaching to try and justify a grabber because we think it's cooler.
I want it to be the grabber. I don't think it matters in a fight against Frostbite either way.
Well, I know, but the whole conversation with Ghost Raptor didn't matter and we had it anyway.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying we're not going to have it. I'm just saying that you could go with either and it wouldn't affect the result. So it's more about what we want, surely.
Well, no, because we've got to try and, emulate the teams in our heads, We've got to run a little subroutine that emulates how they behave and try and figure out what would the team choose here.
I think they would choose the drum because they are a BattleBots team. And BattleBots teams tend to be more about the damage. However, I also think that in the Robot Wars arena, the grabber is at worst an equally good choice.
Oh, dear. I want it to be the grabber, but I think it's going to be the drum.
If the drum breaks for whatever reason, they're not a particularly pushy bot. Whereas even if the grabber breaks, even if it's dragging on the floor, they've still got the ability to control the fight easily. So in that respect, it's possibly a better option. But again, bias of preferring the grabber.
This is also challenging.
Intellectual honesty says you go with the drum.
Yeah, I think we've got to go with the drum, and I think it's going to be a 5 and 1 anyway, or a 1 and 5.
I've also just remembered that technically Razorback does have 2 versions. There was a Season 1 and a Season 2, but they're basically the same. I think the Season 2 one is the only one that had the grabber, so technically we're taking that.
Yeah, obviously. Why wouldn't we?
1 and 5.
1 and 5. It's a 4.
Thankfully, Razorback goes on.
Whew!
Next up, we have a fight I'm quite excited to talk about. Cobra versus Apollo.
This is true.
Cobra, I still maintain, a heavily underrated bot. Apollo, I at times feel a slightly overrated bot.
But they almost flipped the house robots.
And that is the aim of the game.
That's the sole purpose of competing. It's to flip house robots.
All I can think is how entertaining a fight this would be. It's hard to be analytical about a fight that I just really want to see happen. Nice, fast machine against Flipper.
There'd be a lot of throwing around.
Because Cobra is quite easy to get under.
Yeah.
Also, just for clarity, most recent versions of each. No reason to go back to an old version for either, really.
I I don't know, like, Apollo didn't do as well.
No, but I firmly believe that was because of other robots developing around them rather than them being in some way worse.
What was the main upgrade was the drive, wasn't it? I can't remember if we felt that made them a bit, if they'd gone too far with it, but maybe.
I think there's an argument of if it ain't broke, don't fix it with them. But I do feel that their Series 8 win, while completely deserved, was largely a case of they had a robot that they'd been running a while in live events and therefore had the reliability that a lot of other machines didn't have.
Yeah.
You know, they'd taken what was basically Apollo to BattleBots as a reserve, like the year before. It was in no way a new build or anything, whereas a lot of what they were facing was.
Okay, latest version then. I'll go with that.
Where do we start on how this fight actually pans out?
I don't know, I'm going to make a bold claim here. We're in the Robot Wars arena, right?
Yes, we are.
Just to check. I think that Cobra could probably take a lot of flips. Like, I'm sort of thinking, if it were in an enclosed arena, I think that Apollo would run out of CO2 before it did enough damage to Cobra to win the fight. But I think we're not in an enclosed arena, and I think it's quite easy to get a robot out of the Robot Wars arena if you're Apollo.
Reasonably, yeah. Apollo as a flipper isn't very well optimised to manoeuvre an opponent, but they've still got a few flips like that.
That's true. They are more, yeah.
Something like Rapid or TR2 you look at as robots that can more easily do it, but Apollo is very well driven. And also, the size and shape of it would make it hard for Cobra to control it in any way, which is what Cobra is really aiming to do.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way really that Cobra could grab it, because there's just nowhere it can grab it, I don't think.
Not really, no.
No.
But again, whenever I think of Cobra, I just think back to that opening three-way between them, Behemoth and Eruption, I think it was, where they just kept on coming. They were this constant nuisance, and they're just really hard to get rid of.
Yeah, and I suppose even if they can't grab anything, they can still obviously shove Apollo around from the side quite well. And
they're going to demonstrate so much aggression over the course of a fight. But I'll admit there is also a bias of, I really like Cobra because I really like shovey, pushy bots.
I think the thing that's going to swing it for me then is just sort of how many flips per minute is Apollo going to be able to get on Cobra? That's sort of my question. Is like, is Cobra, it's obviously quite quick, but is it maneuverable and well driven enough to avoid being flipped for a long time? In which case I think it's going to do quite well. Or is it a case where it's going to spend a lot of time sort of flying through the air?
The way I imagine this fight panning out is that quite a lot of the engagements will be Cobra charging from a distance, which then makes it quite hard to time an effective flip.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining quite a few missed flips. That means I'm also imagining Apollo potentially spending quite a lot of time upside down from its own flips, wasting gas getting back over.
That's true.
So that time when they're upside down, they are more vulnerable. But again, I just feel like I am reaching to make this in Cobra's favour somehow when it probably shouldn't be.
I mean, I think there's no escaping the fact that Apollo is a champion. Coming into this conversation, I was gonna be like 1-5, but maybe 2-4.
The fact that my heart is telling me 3-3 means that it's probably 2-4.
Yeah, I think it's 2-4 because I think the way that Cobra wins that fight is either aggression with the judges or the pit. And the way that Apollo wins is to flip it out of the arena, which seems more likely to me.
I mean, there's only it's somewhere between a 1 in 3 and a 2 in 3 chance that the pit even gets opened.
Yeah.
2 in 3 assuming that Apollo even goes for the button at some point, which they could probably avoid. Although, as we all know, just getting in that area of the arena can be enough.
Yeah, they might look at it funny. Right. Okay, 2
so
and
yeah, I'm happy with 2-4.
2 and 4 then.
So 1 and 2 is Cobra, everything else is Apollo.
It's a 5, and Apollo hath won.
Apollo, the admittedly former champion, is graciously allowed to continue at the expense of the frankly brilliant Cobra.
I'm sorry. Up next, we have Aftershock versus Ironside 3. And I have no freaking idea how you're going to have this. I don't know what you're going to do. I feel like you're going to explode.
Right, versions first.
Okay.
Ironside, I think, is very clearly just most recent.
Okay, I'm happy to go with that.
I think Aftershock is more of a question. Because you've got the Series 9 version, which was by far the most successful, compared to the Series 10 version, which didn't get as far, but was in a ridiculous, stupid, and frankly offensive heat lineup that was clearly designed to get as many top-tier robots out of the way as possible, although they still performed terribly in it, so...
So the Series 10 one was like the suited-up version, wasn't it? Was it the one that looked a bit more suave? Is that what we said about it? I have a vague...
I completely get what you mean. It was kind of... It was slightly more complex in shape and not necessarily better for it.
I feel like you just don't remember any of the conversations we've had in the past. I don't
remember my own opinions, Sam. How am I going to remember whole conversations?
We definitely likened this version to something wearing a suit.
It's the pimped out Aftershock.
I mean, which one would you, in your heart of hearts, which is the one that's more effective?
I think they're probably about equal, realistically. I think the second version was less reliable. So for me, the fact that we have so much evidence of the first version being effective makes it the safer one to go for. The only thing that would make me go with the second is that for the second, they came in with a wider range of disc and bar options, which might come in useful in future.
That's true.
But I just have no faith in that second version.
I want to go with the first one because we know it works. I think that's what we've got to do.
If Will Thomas phoned me tomorrow and said, we want to enter one of the Aftershocks into BattleBots and we want you to drive it, which one do you want? I'd be taking the Series 9 version.
Fair enough. Season 9 it is then. Series 9.
Thank you. And of course, we now have a fight that actually happened. It's just a fight that happened when Aftershock was in a particularly weakened state. Although, to be honest, they still came quite close to winning that fight. Although largely because Ironside was also weakened and the self-writing wasn't working, so maybe that evens out.
What will you do? How will we swing this?
Which way are you leaning?
I'm leaning towards Aftershock.
I am too, and I feel like that's probably not correct.
Okay. Why is it not correct?
When that fight happened, I was fully backing Ironside to win it. I didn't want it to happen, but that was all I could see happening. And the fact that Aftershock came close to winning it, I remember being a shock. Because what you've got in Ironside is something with significantly better reach. And you've also got a big horizontal with lots of opportunities to sideswipe not only the weapon on Aftershock, but also the weapon mounting. Yeah,
the mounting's a good shout, actually, yeah. And I guess because we've got the disc of... Because Aftershock, this version of Aftershock is just a disc, isn't it?
They did have a bar as well.
They did, okay.
Which they ran in the Carbide fight and the Ironside fight.
Yeah.
Actually, the Ironside... Did they run the bar in the Ironside fight?
I don't know, but I'm happy to assume that they did / would in this fantasy version, because that seems like the more logical choice to me, at least.
Yeah. Although it does make their self-writing a little less reliable.
Are they going to spend a lot of time on their backs?
That was pretty much their default stance a lot of the
time. I'll tell you what I'm learning, which is that because we've not talked about Robot Wars robots in quite a long time, it's surprisingly hard for me to remember what they're all like. I'm still sort of leaning towards Aftershock, and I don't know why. I see your point though, where it doesn't sort of feel right.
Again, this is largely me worrying about my own bias. I think there's an argument for it being 3-3.
Yeah, I think so.
And I don't love that, but
I think we've got to go with it.
Because when it happened, it was quite a close fight that was ended in kind of silly circumstances. Although again, that wasn't full strength versus full strength.
Yeah, but it was still weakened versus weakened, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's about the way that they're weakened, though. So the way that Ironside was weakened sort of added a defeat state that wouldn't ordinarily be there. Whereas the way Aftershock was weakened was just, who knows if it's going to work.
I'm happy to go with 3-3, I think.
I'm happy to go 3-3, acknowledging that it's a cop-out.
Yeah, okay. A cop-out 3-3.
So, odds for Aftershock. Actually, no. Evens for Aftershock. Odds for Ironside 3, because 3 is odd. And that's how we're going to remember it.
It's a mnemonic. We've got a mnemonic this time.
It's not a mnemonic, but okay.
How is it? What is it then?
It's just a link between two things. A mnemonic is big elephants can't always use small escalators.
Okay, whatever. It's a memory technique. Let's go with it.
Evens for Aftershock. Odds for Ironsides.
Ironside has 1. It's a 5.
And no one's happy about it.
It's a 5.
I love that you felt the need to point that out. Just to check, it's 5. That is odd, right?
I just want to clarify that 5 is an odd number.
It is indeed.
And so therefore, Ironside 3, which is also odd, has 1.
Imagine if it had been a 3, the excitement.
It would have been
the highlight of the podcast.
uncontainable excitement.
Next up, it's two kind of Robot Wars classics in Orte versus Can Opener. Orte being literally Bigger Brother with a worse shape. It's Stealth Bigger Brother.
Stealth Bigger Brother, I like that.
Neither of them have much pedigree in the modern age. Both were very successful in their older incarnations. So Bigger Brother Orte as Bigger Brother was a grand finalist, technically. It should have lost its semi-final, but it had that amazing fight against Hypnodisc that you don't remember. Also did quite reasonably well, I think, at Battle Bots. Can Opener won an Annihilator, so it's got that going for it. I'm reaching here because this is just a really weird fight.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it at all. I mean, I know you're saying that these are both like, good robots in, back in the day, but like it's not back in the day anymore.
I feel like we're basically just fighting their like Series 6 versions.
But that's not, but you can't have that by your own rules, really, because we've got to talk about the modern ones.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the thing is, we have no data points on either in the modern era. Orte, its link fell out in its only fight. Can Opener was in a melee with Sweeney Todd and went out first. There's not much to go on here.
Is this going to be another one of those just ridiculous 3-3s because they're both terrible?
I suppose we need to look at this as a fight between Flipper and Horizontal Pincers. That very well used weapon type.
I mean, when you put it like that, it's got to be in the Flipper's favour. How powerful is the Flipper on Orte?
It's all right. Kind of bog standard, we feel. I mean, we didn't see it work, but if we assume a reasonable... I know we're not allowed to assume.
We can't make assumptions. We didn't see it in the same way. We didn't see Predator work, so we can't assume that it did anything.
Is it an assumption to say that it must be at least as good as it was in the early 2000s?
I think the get out clause you've got here is that we've made assumptions about iron ore, or like one of the examples you gave in the rules was about iron ore.
But that was based on modern era live event performance.
So has Orte competed in modern era live events?
I'm not sure. The only footage I've seen of it is when it was being used as a house robot in a university event that was run by its builder. But I think it was still more Bigger Brother than Orte. Really, what we're having to do here is trying to work out when it crossed from being Bigger Brother into Orte. Because I think Orte was a name that was only given for Robot Wars purposes.
I think that we've got to consider Orte as separate from Bigger Brother, I'm afraid. And we've got to assume that its weapon isn't that good. If it works,
I think you're right.
If it works at all.
So have we got to assume that its link is going to fall out as soon as it's touched then?
I mean, I'm just trying to think of like, if this were Predator, what would we be saying?
Yeah, but that's Predator. No, you're absolutely right. Consistency is key, which is why I shouldn't be administrating all of this.
And I don't want to go so far as to say it's a guarantee that its link falls out. But I can't in good conscience make big sweeping judgments and assumptions about how effective its Flipper is, because I think if you start down that road, you're going to start getting down to the point where everything is like Bronco level power, which is silly. Just because we haven't seen it, or it must be like Bronco. I
almost feel like we need to pause, watch the episode and see if the Flipper was fired at any point. That's what we should do. It's not what we're going to do, but it's what we should do. I don't want to sit here and say we can't make any assumptions because it might be that we've just not done our homework well enough. I forgot that we'd be this anal about it.
This is ridiculous.
Which is funny because it's my rules that make us this anal.
I mean, I'm willing to sort of like say that it works. Like, I'm not going to go so far as...
We don't have evidence that it doesn't work.
I'm not going to go so far as to say that it doesn't work because... I'm so sorry. Because unlike with Predator, we have evidence that the guy's capable of building a robot that works. and so I'm willing to concede that it's possible that this Flipper works.
You see, I was going to go, we have evidence of Predator not working, and we also don't actually know what it's meant to be. At least with this, it hasn't proven itself to not work, and we know what it's supposed to do.
That's a much fairer...
If it had a history of not working, then I'd say we say it doesn't work. But we can't come into this assuming that every robot doesn't do anything until we see it move.
That is a much fairer way of saying that.
I like your way more in a sense, but...
I'm sorry, Craig.
So Orte is a functional but unspectacular Flipper.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here assuming it's Bronco.
No, good.
I think there has to be a mid-ground of assumption that they have to prove themselves either way from.
Yeah.
That's just how assumption works. Can opener, we know the weapon works. We haven't seen it go through anything, but again, from sort of dead years live events, we know that it can grab things. It's still a 3-3, isn't it? That's the problem. After all this.
I mean, I'm almost inclined, if we're going to assume that the flipper works, which is a fair assumption, I'm almost inclined to give it in 4-2 in favour of Orte.
But can opener's invertible.
3-3.
3-3. So 1, 2, 3 for Orte, 4, 5, 6 for can opener.
It's a 3.
Orte sneaks through.
Well done, Orte, and apologies to Craig Danby.
We should just put that as a little sort of footnote on the website at this point. Sorry, Craig.
I'm going to add that to my outro now from now on.
Sorry, Craig. Bye.
So up next, we have Sabretooth versus Rex.
Which Sabretooth?
I have no stinking clue.
We can rule out the Series 8 one, because that was cool but weird and didn't work.
Okay.
That was the one with the drum and the kind of forky lifter thing and a wedge that was just everything in one.
Okay.
That leaves Series 9, which was the kind of cool Sabretooth that was sort of invertible but not quite. Or the Series 10, we're going to try and make this really effective Sabretooth. The kind of modular, functional, fixable Sabretooth.
Was that any more successful?
Hard to say.
My recollection is that you didn't like it as much as the one before.
I didn't, no. The issue was they had a lot of teething problems with the weapon that they didn't have with the other version. And they did eventually get it working for the 10-way, but that's quite a difficult place to prove a robot. Whereas the Series 9 version, although it had that flaw in terms of its invertibility, it did exceptionally well against terahertz, and then sort of got basically ended by Aftershock.
I think we should go with that one. I think similar to how the decision process for Aftershock, I think we've got to go with the one that we sort of see more of and we know works more effectively.
Yeah, more evidence of success, I think, is the key thing here again, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's kind of a discussion for which version of Rex, but ultimately they're about the same, so it's going to be most recent, isn't it?
Fine by me.
So, tell me why this isn't a 5-1.
This is a 5-1. I mean, I think I've made my thoughts on Rex clear in the past. I'm stunned that it's even allowed as a form of mobility. It's ridiculous.
No.
I still think it's insane.
Rex is brilliant.
Disagree. 5-1 though.
I'll allow it, but I want the upset here so that we can talk about Rex again. Do it. It's the polar opposite of an upset. It's a 1, Sabretooth wins, shock horror.
Oh dear. Lucky me.
To be fair, Rex has a lot of weapon power and could potentially one-shot any opponent. It's just worse than 1 in 6 shots of that happening.
Yeah, it just can't hit anything because it's got no control over where it goes.
Has some control.
No control over where it goes.
And we end once again on a bang. No, that's not the phrase. We end with a bang.
On a bang.
End on a bang. Yeah, we end with a bang on Plan X versus MR Speed Squared. I mean, where do you start with Plan X?
Is it definitely Plan X? Are you sure it's not Plan 10?
Or Planks? I kind of prefer the Apple version you've just gone with there.
I'm going with Plan X because I would call it an iPhone X, so...
I mean, it also helps that we have, the builder and commentators saying its name multiple times, but...
Okay, Plan X then.
It's just a hot mess of a robot.
Once again, I'm looking at it and I don't even know how to parse what I'm seeing.
It's an art bot that isn't necessarily an art bot.
Yeah.
It's like an art bot mated with a weather vane, and this was what came out. But there's a problem here, you see.
Of course there is.
But we'll get to that in a minute, because we need to pick a version of MR Speed Squared.
I wasn't even aware it had versions.
There were 2. There was the first version, which was taller and slightly more reliable, and the second version, which was shorter and slightly less reliable.
I think we should go with a slightly more reliable one.
The one that couldn't beat Foxic. Are you sure you want to go with that?
Well, what was the one that was less reliable?
I mean, I love both of them, but they were both pretty flawed.
I don't know what to say here. I mean, I think I'm just... Even if it can't beat Foxic, I'm like... It's the more reliable one by your own... What you just said. By your own admission.
More reliable, less powerful. Less well-armoured as well.
Which is better. In your heart of hearts.
I think they're equal, in which case we go most recent. But
fine, go most recent then.
The problem is, this is one of those times where we're going through the versioning on a robot that we don't expect to go very far, but we do expect it to get through this fight. So we need to actually think about it properly. I think most recent is a reasonable thing to do.
I'll go with that. Most recent. Like I said, I wasn't really aware there were versions, so I'm happy either way.
Let's get to the problem here.
Okay.
We made Sabretooth versus Rex a 5-1. I think we can agree that MR speed squared is not as good as Sabretooth.
Okay.
Plan X, however, did beat Rex.
Yeah, but anything can beat Rex.
So was Sabretooth versus Rex enough of a 5-1 that even with that sort of squishing together of these two, it's still a 5-1?
I mean, I don't think beating Rex counts as like squishing anything together there.
I mean, it took damage from Rex. I'm really hoping it was Rex now. It might have been Counter Revolution.
I mean, so right, this ridiculous weapon on. Well, so I guess so. Plan X has got these like these other bot things with it. Like, are they these mini bot type things? Are they in ever?
I had forgotten about the mini bots, but yeah, why not invite them to the party?
Well, yeah, but I mean, are they like an optional thing that they can only use with certain weapon/armor configurations, or are they just always there?
I'm fairly sure they were just part of it, and I think honestly they would run them anyway because any chance to take a wedge in against a horizontal.
This is true. So I think the wedges are gonna. I mean, I'm gonna end up going to like 4-2.
I kind of want to make it a 3-3 just for a laugh.
No, we can't do. No, that is unacceptable to me.
Plan X is a boat made of coat hangers. An MR speed squared is an angry tea cake. It's just, this isn't a who's better, this is a who's least worst.
Well, I think in this particular instance, because Plan X has got the wedgie things...
Are you making that a 4-2 for Plan X?
I think I've got to make it a 4-2 for Plan X.
I'll be honest, if we were at the beginning of the episode, I'd probably argue with you, but yeah, why not? Let's do it. Screw it. 1, 2, 3, 4 for Plan X, 5, 6 for MR speed squared. I'm sorry, everyone.
It's a 3.
But that's okay, because if we'd gone 3-3, Plan X would have gone through anyway.
Plan X hath won.
Do we have to justify this one quickly? I feel like we have to justify this one.
I mean, I think the wedges break the weapon on MR speed squared.
Yeah. They don't even need to. MR speed squared is so capable of self-destructing. Anything that puts, especially with the version we've gone with, the later version, anything that puts it off its axis, it's just flipping everywhere.
We're meant to be picking the best robot.
Again, the other one barely beat Foxic. You can't choose the first one.
Dear. Well, with apologies to Craig Danby.
I love how he's taken a beating in an episode that neither of his robots are in.
I think it's time to end.
Do the outro, Sam.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episode/47. And there you can find information about everything that's just happened. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your apologies to Craig Danby.
I shall now project correctly.